If you're a millennial, this is going to hurt. Not because it's mean, because it's true. You were handed a script, a promise, a deal that said, do everything right and you'll be fine. So you did every single thing. And you're still not fine. This isn't your fault, but you need to hear what actually happened to you. If you were born between 1981 and 1996, you are a millennial, and your generation was sold the biggest lie in modern history. This isn't about defending or attacking millennials. This is about understanding the psychology of what happens when an entire generation is betrayed by the system they believed in. Let's break down what actually happened to your brain. You were raised on a formula, a contract, an unspoken deal that went like this. Go to school, get good grades, go to college, get a degree, work hard, buy a house, retire at 65. Simple, clear, guaranteed. So you did it. You played by the rules. You took out the loans. You believed that education was the golden ticket, that hard work would be rewarded, and then the world pulled the rug out. The 2008 financial crisis hit just as you were entering the workforce. The entry-level jobs that required 3-5 years of experience disappeared. The housing market you were told to invest in collapsed. The retirement plans your parents relied on evaporated. You did everything right, and it still wasn't enough. Psychologically, this created what researchers call betrayal trauma. When a system you trusted breaks its promises, your brain doesn't just get disappointed, it recalibrates reality. You learn that the rules don't apply anymore, that the American dream was a marketing campaign, that loyalty to a company, to a system, to the right path was a one-way street. So you stopped buying in, and boomers called you entitled. But you weren't entitled, you were awake. Let's talk about what they strapped to your back before you even started running. Student loan debt. Your parents could work a summer job and pay for college. You? Let's put this in perspective. Your parents could work a minimum wage summer job and pay for a year of college. You'd have to work minimum wage for 3 years straight. No rent, no food, no life, just to pay for 1 year. That's not inflation, that's a scam. The average millennial carries over $30,000 in student loans. Many carry double that, for degrees that were supposed to guarantee success, but instead guaranteed decades of monthly payments. Here's the psychological damage. Debt isn't just financial, it's existential. When you're paying off loans in your 30s, you can't buy a house, you delay starting a family, you stay in jobs you hate because you can't afford to quit. You defer your actual life because you're still paying for the education that was supposed to start it. This creates what psychologists call extended adolescence, not because you're immature, because the milestones that defined adulthood became economically impossible. Marriage, home ownership, financial stability, these weren't choices you delayed. They were options taken off the table. And when older generations asked, why aren't millennials buying homes? Why aren't they having kids? The answer was simple, because you can't afford the entry fee to adulthood. So you stopped chasing what you couldn't catch. You rented. You minimized. You chose experiences over possessions, not because you're frivolous, because you learned that ownership is a trap when you're already drowning. Here's something unique to millennials. You were the first generation to grow up with the internet, not born into it like Gen Z, but raised alongside it. You remember dial-up. You remember a world before Google, before social media, before everything was quantified, optimized, and compared. And then you watched the internet turn life into a competition. Suddenly, everyone's success was visible. Everyone's highlight reel was on display. Everyone was a brand. You weren't just trying to live, you were trying to optimize. The best job, the best apartment, the best relationship, the perfect Instagram aesthetic, the most productive morning routine, the ideal work-life balance. You're scrolling LinkedIn at midnight, looking at someone your age who's a CEO and founder and wondering, what am I doing wrong? Nothing. You're doing nothing wrong. They just got better at performing success, and you got tired of pretending. Psychologically, this created a generation of perfectionists who feel like they're always failing. Because optimization is a trap, there's always someone doing it better, making more, traveling more, looking happier. And your brain, wired to compare, started treating life like a performance review. Every decision became a calculation. Is this the optimal choice? Am I maximizing my potential? Am I behind? This is why millennials are anxious. Not because you're weak, because you're exhausted from treating your entire existence like a project that can be improved. You were told you could have it all, so you tried, and when you couldn't, you blamed yourself instead of the system that lied to you. Here's what millennials did that no generation before them had the courage to do. You talked about it. You didn't suffer in silence. You didn't tough it out. You didn't bury your trauma and pretend everything was fine. You went to therapy. You talked about mental health. You normalized anxiety and depression. You said this system is breaking us, and we're not going to pretend it's not. And older generations called you weak, snowflakes. Participation trophy kids who can't handle reality. But here's what they missed. You're not running from reality. You're refusing to accept their broken version of it. Previous generations had the same anxiety, the same depression, the same trauma. They just didn't have the language or the permission to name it. You do. And that's not a character flaw. That's emotional intelligence. Psychologically, this shift is massive. You're the first generation to treat mental health like physical health, to see therapy not as a last resort but as maintenance. You broke the stigma. You made it okay to admit you're not okay. And yeah, maybe you overshare sometimes. Maybe you pathologize normal stress. Maybe you've turned therapy speak into internet slang. But you also made it possible for people to get help without shame. And that's not weakness, that's revolution. Let's talk about hustle culture. Because millennials both created it and are being destroyed by it. You were told that if you just worked hard enough, success would follow. So you worked. Side hustles, freelance gigs, multiple jobs, the grind, the rise and grind, the 5 a.m. club. You turned exhaustion into identity. I'm so busy, I'm grinding. Hustle mode. But here's what actually happened. You were sold productivity as self-worth. If you're not hustling, you're falling behind. If you're resting, you're lazy. If you're not monetizing your hobbies, you're wasting potential. Psychologically, this is burnout by design. You don't have work-life balance, you have work-life blur. Your job is your identity. Your hobbies are side hustles. Your rest is self-care that you have to schedule like a meeting. And when you burn out, which you will, because humans aren't meant to run at maximum capacity forever, you're told it's your fault for not managing stress better, but it's not a personal failure, it's a systemic one. Millennials were conditioned to see themselves as brands, as entrepreneurs of their own lives, as the CEO of Me Inc. And that sounds empowering until you realize you're not the boss, you're the product, and the market is exhausted. Here's what boomers don't understand about millennials. You're not cynical because you gave up. You're cynical because you tried so hard and the system failed you. You watched 9/11s as kids. You graduated into the 2008 crash. You entered your 30s during a pandemic. You've been living through unprecedented times for 20 years straight, and they wonder why you're anxious. But here's the thing, you haven't stopped trying. You're the generation fighting for climate action, for healthcare reform, for student loan forgiveness, for workers' rights. You're starting businesses, creating art, building communities, raising the next generation with intention. You didn't inherit wealth, so you built networks. You didn't get handed opportunities, so you created them. You're not killing industries, you're refusing to participate in ones that exploit you. You stopped buying diamonds because they're artificially expensive. You stopped eating at Applebee's because the food is bad and the wages are worse. You stopped buying houses because the system made them unaffordable and then blamed you for it. You're not entitled, you're strategic. And yeah, you're exhausted, you're anxious, you're in therapy. You're still paying off student loans in your 40s, but you're also the most educated generation in history, the most socially conscious, the most willing to call out systems that don't work. You were told the world would be yours. It wasn't. So you're building a new one, and that's not failure, that's resilience. To millennials, you're not the problem. You're the generation that refused to keep pretending you were sold a lie. You called it out. You're still paying the price for a degree that was supposed to save you. You're tired. You're burned out, you're wondering if it'll ever get better. But here's what you need to hear. You didn't fail the system failed you. And the fact that you're still here, still trying, still building, still fighting, that's not weakness, that's survival. If you're a millennial, comment "It hit hard" below. Let's remind each other that we're not crazy, the system is.